Welcome, everybody, to Astrotheology Part 2 with Micah here. The first episode or first whatever we did was basically, I guess, half of what you have as far as the presentation goes. So this part around, we're going to wrap it up, finish it up, and kind of see how all the puzzle pieces connect. I know some of you have already contacted me about part 1 and you're like, whoa. So I'm sure that part 2 is going to be even more whoa. So thank you for coming back and doing part 2. I can't wait to get started. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
All right, let's do that. So I think this is where we left off. Was astrology is a language. If you understand this language, the sky speaks to you, right? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go. Now, you probably should watch part 1, or at least a decent amount of part 1, and then watch right into part 2. Okay. So what is the point of this? We take for granted that we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. They had to know things. They needed to know Taurus was when you put the plow on the bull, and plant, as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac from the astrotheological perspective of it, and was the knowledge of staying alive, the most important thing. They would look up at the stars and see all this movement and make up stories about them and pass them down to their children, then to their children. Eventually, they learned how to write and wrote them down, and they evolved from Sumerian to Babylonian to Egyptian to Judaism, Old Testament, then to Christians in the New Testament, even further along into Islam. I'm not going to get into how the Catholic Church created Islam in order to get Jerusalem back from the Jews, but that's what happened. So my point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. Okay? Jesus disappears at 12 and comes back at 30. This has been a subject of great debate, but the answer is quite simple, actually. What happens to a young Jewish boy at the age of 12? He becomes bar mitzvahed. He becomes a man. So Jesus becomes a man and leaves to study. He starts his ministry at 30, but why? The ancient Jewish religion has roots in Saturnalia worship from before it. That's why their day of rest is the Saturday, or the Saturn day. So why 30? Saturnalia worshippers said that you were not allowed to become a teacher until Saturn came back to the point it was at when you were born. It just so happens that Saturn takes 30 years to come back. Refer back to Ezekiel at 30, seeing God. In Ezekiel's inaugural vision, in my 30th year, in the 4th month of the 5th day, when I was among the exiles by the Kebar River, the heavens were opened and I saw a vision of God. Okay, so let's look at this picture right here on the right. Okay, this is Ezekiel's wheel. This is Ezekiel's vision from God. So let's break it down for a couple of things. Now, immediately to the right of Ezekiel, you'll see what's known as the tetramorph. Okay, it's a 4-headed animal. Okay, you see the lion in the front, you see the man on the right, you see the bull on the left, and you see the eagle on top. Now, Joanna, you already know that the eagle is the ascendant or the evolved form of Scorpio. However, these are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. So what does that basically mean? What is the 4 fixed signs? Well, they're fixed because they're fixed in their season. You have 3 different signs. So there's 12 zodiac signs. It's broken down into 4 seasons of 3 signs. The first sign into the season is the cardinal sign. The second sign is the fixed because it's right in the middle. It's fixed in the season. And the third sign is the mutable sign that takes it out. Okay? Now, what are these 4 signs? Well, the lion is Leo, the man is Aquarius, the eagle is Scorpio, and the bull is Taurus. We'll look at it even closer, okay? The lion, Leo, that's in the dead of summer. The man, Aquarius, that's in the dead of winter. The eagle, Scorpio, that's in the dead of fall. And the bull, Taurus, that's the dead of spring. Yes.
I have to say something. So today we were doing a workshop and demystifying Halloween, and tomorrow we're getting into witches, Wicca, like what all that means, and the 8 holy days. And I was talking about how the 8 holy days they talk about are basically the equinoxes, the solstices, and then the 4 fixed, the other four fixed signs, which are dead in the middle of February 1st and May 1st and August 1st, November 1st, etc. But now you're bringing it up today. It's so funny.
Yeah.
So I had to share that. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. You're talking about Samhain, right? Or
Yeah.
Samhain? Yeah.
Samhain.
Right. So everybody knows that basically Halloween is when the veil from the spirit world in our world is actually the thinnest. Okay, everybody knows that. Okay. So this being the tetramorph, okay, these are the four fixed signs of the zodiac. Where else do we know that from? Well, we did Revelation 4:7. That literally mentions the four fixed signs. To the right of it is the zodiac wheel. Now, a lot of people will say this is what an angel looks like because you think that these are little eyeballs, but they're not. This is actually the zodiac wheel. In fact, the cross that you make when you have the solstices and the equinoxes, you can see that very clearly here. This is an early depiction of the wheel. Now, the other thing you're going to see is you're going to notice that God is in the sun because God was the sun. Okay, we know this with Christianity. We know that Akhenaten in 1367 BC in Egypt formed everybody following one God, which was the sun. Okay, so the idea that Abraham started monotheism is nonsense. Okay, the Egyptians did it well before then. Okay, so the sun tells the hour of the day, the moon tells the day of the month, the zodiac tells the month of the year. This is a perfect calendar that is in our little neck of the woods in the middle of the Milky Way galaxy. There's a perfect calendar. Okay, to me, that's a fingerprint of creation. Okay, the chances of this accidentally happening is near impossible to me. So we talk about what God is. So God is infinite. Okay, how can something exist outside of infinity? It can't. The biggest lie we've been taught is that we're separate from God, that we should fear it, that we are separate from it. We are a part of it. Many of you have children that are literally half your DNA, so they are a part of you, but you experience them subjectively outside your body. So is with God, with us. A piece of God comes down in what we call consciousness into a body, and we feel separate from it. We are all God experiencing itself subjectively. Einstein said about God, that he believes in the God of Spinoza. So Baruch Spinoza was a thinker back in the day who said that God doesn't want you huddled in churches and temple in the cold, praying as loud as you can with others, praying the loudest. Jesus said that those that give for publicity or pray the loudest, they have their reward. And what that basically means is the adulation and the attention they get from giving is what feeds them. They don't do it purely. Okay? If you pray, pray by yourself. The book of Thomas says, split a piece of wood and I'm there. Turn over a stone and you will find me. Spinoza's God wants you to go to the mountains and the lake and enjoy what I am created for you and worship that way. The biggest lie we've ever been collectively taught is that we need to fear and worship. When we are a baby, we are in our mother's womb. The mother, being the supreme being, is aware of the baby. However, the baby is not aware of the mother from its vantage point, as is us with God. We are each a piece of God, unaware of the whole because we're in the middle of it. So Moses goes up to get the 10 Commandments, and when he comes down, he sees them worshiping a golden calf. So what's more likely? The Jews got run out of Egypt. They couldn't even let the bread rise, which is why we have matzah to this day. They rushed to the desert with the clothes on their back, but happened to carry enough gold between all of them, found welding equipment in the desert, and built a giant statue, or the sun is the gold and the calf is the bull or Taurus. They were worshiping the sun and Taurus, whereas these are the Jews. They're the people of Aries with the ram. That's why they blow the ram's horn, okay, to signify the Aries worship. So that's why he's pissed, because they go back to ram worship. Calf worship, bull worship, and they continue to try to go back to bull worship, even though the age is long gone. Okay, they continue to try to have sacrifices nowadays of the perfect red heifer. Okay, so Numbers 21:4-9. The Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many of the people died. So the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned because we have spoken against the Lord. And you intercede with the Lord that he may remove the serpents from us. And Moses interceded for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a standard. And it shall come about that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, he will live. Well, where do we know the serpent on the staff from? It's the rod of Asclepius. Okay, it's the caduceus. It's the kundalini. Okay, these are all influenced into the Bible. They don't openly talk about it, but it is. In the year 1367 BC, well before Moses, Akhenaten established monotheism under a sun god in Egypt. Abraham, as the story goes, stated that the one true God belief, but that just isn't true at all. In fact, during this time period, they have found plenty of fertility gods and goddesses dug up in current times that the Jews have made. In fact, Moses is a character who is based on two Egyptians, Akhenaten, who is the basis of Moses, who may have in fact been Moses, and Tuthmosis, which is where he gets his name, hence Moses. The Egyptians kept pristine, meticulous records about their history, even the things that were unflattering or painted them in a bad light. There is zero evidence in the Egyptian records of Exodus, of Moses, of the plagues, of the Red Sea parting. There is zero mention in the Bible of the pyramids and the Sphinx. You would think that they would be mentioned on either side of this. Okay, there's a lot of evidence pointing towards the fact that the Jews were never run out of Egypt, that this never happened, that this was just a story that they came up with. Okay,
Allegorical and metaphysical.
it is. It's not literal. It's just not a literal
Yeah.
story. So simply and always has been described the path of the sun over the ecliptic as the sun dances its way around the 12 zodiacs. Mithra, born December 25th, the Immaculate Conception. He is the sun god and Messiah. 12 disciples accepted since. Was killed and resurrected, becoming God incarnate. Cult includes communion, baptism. Adonis, born December 25th, Greek god of fertility, aka Babylonian Tammuz, aka Syrian savior. He was killed and buried, resurrected 3 days later. Dionysus, born on December 25th as a result of the Immaculate Conception, Greek god of winemaking, aka Bacchus, aka savior and liberator of mankind, naturally with communion. Osiris, born in late December to a virgin, Egyptian sun and underworld god, aka judge of the dead, aka one of the Egyptian trinity. You have Isis, Horus, and Set. Okay, that's IHS, by the way, which is the IHS is the breakdown for the Jesuits. By the way, if you look at it, it's a black sun, and it says IHS. It stands for Isis, Horus, and Set. Ruled over 12 kings, betrayed, killed, and buried, risen after 3 days. Horus, born December 25th to Isis as a result of Immaculate Conception from the spirit of Osiris. I think it's from his. No, I'm not going to get into that. The god of the sun and light, one of the Egyptian trinity, embodied the resurrection. God equals sun. December 25th, the day of resurrection of the sun. Why? Because the sun either rises a degree every single day or drops a degree every single day, depending on what side of the wheel it's on. And then for 3 days in Cancer, it walks sideways. It stays at that level. And in 3 days in Sagittarius, it walks sideways for 3 days. And then it rises again in December 25th. Chapter 125, Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Declaration of Innocence before the gods of the tribunal. O swallower of shades, who came forth from Kernet, I have not slain people. Thou shalt not kill. O doubly evil one, who came forth from the Buserite gnome, I have not had intercourse with a married woman. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. O he who prospers the common people who came forth from Asiot, I have not cursed a god. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. 3 of the 10 commandments are mentioned here. It's just right there. You can't deny it. The rest can be found in, it says the 42 negative confessions of Matt, but it's not. I have to change that. It's the 42 positive affirmations of Matt. Okay, that's where you'll find the 10 commandments. Lazarus is Osiris, whom Horus raised from the dead. The Greek name Lazarus equals Eliezer in Hebrew and means whom God helps. It is a strange coincidence, firstly, that the person whom Jesus resurrects happens to be named whom God helps. And secondly, that Eliezer, or breaking down its original components in Hebrew, Elazar, closely resembles a combination of the Semitic word for God, El, with the Egyptian name for Osiris, Osir. So the story of Jesus resurrecting Lazarus is literally ripped from the Egyptians. Okay? The ancient, now here's where it gets interesting. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, Joanna, but the ancient Egyptians used to worship the sun in Taurus. There's hieroglyphs of the bull with the sun between its horns on the left. Okay, they're telling you they used to worship the bull. Then they fade in numbers, and during the age of Aries, the Jews come up. Okay, they become the prevalent people. They come out with a holy book. Okay, it's the ram. That's why they blow the ram's horn to the sky in the holidays. Then after the age of Aries, they fade. in Numbers. And the Christians come up during the age of Pisces. That's why they have the Jesus fish as showed below. This is also why Jesus is able to feed the masses with 2 fish. 2 fish is Pisces. Okay, John 21. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Okay, the Vesica Pisces is on the left in red. Okay, the Vesica Pisces mathematical equation is 247 over 153. That's where they get the 153 from. The ancients knew all this ancient science. Like I said, they were very metaphorical. They were very
And the numerology in there too, with the 9 being consciousness and the metaphysical aspects behind it.
exactly. It's being a sacred number, right? One of Nikola Tesla's Trinity numbers. Yes, absolutely. Now look at this. The age of Pisces is over. And look what happens. One World Religion headquarters set to open next year. They need a new religion for the age of Aquarius. Okay? They're ruled by the stars. The elites, the people that run everything. They're ruled by the stars. This is what they're trying to do. Now here's the Synod of Jamnia, and I took this screenshot, even though it's a pretty shitty screenshot, but I took this because this is straight from the Encyclopedia Britannica's website, because people want their sources. They want to know their sources. They want a good source. Well, what the Synod of Jamnia was it was very similar to what the Council of Nicaea was, only it happened about 225 years earlier, about 100 AD. What they did was there were a bunch of rabbis, okay, and politicians that got together, and basically at 100 AD, believe it or not, the Old Testament wasn't canonized, so the books were always out of order. So they put them in order. What most people don't know is the book of Job is the oldest book in the Bible, okay, by a lot. Okay, the book of Genesis is not actually the first book of the Bible. I mean, it is in where it's located, but it's not the oldest, believe it or not. Okay, so what they did was they canonized the Bible at this point. Now, something interesting happened, Joanna, because 30 years prior to this Synod of Jamnia, the Gospel of Mark came out somewhere. 70 AD, right around the time of the destruction of the Second Temple in Israel. And what they were doing at this Synod was they were trying to decide whether or not to include the book of Mark into the Old Testament. Now, could you imagine how different everything would be had they done that? It would be so earth-shatteringly different, okay? So remember we were talking about the 30 before, Ezekiel 30, Jesus at 30. Genesis 32, there's the 30. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Okay? Well, Peniel is pineal. It becomes pineal. This is the eye of Horus under it, okay? It represents the pineal gland. This is the brain. This is a sagittal cut of the brain, like this. Then you open it like this. This is what you see. In the middle, the thing that looks like a nipple is the pineal gland. And above it, the eyebrow range, is the corpus callosum. So what is the pineal gland? Okay, well, what it does is it releases melatonin. So like right now, when it's dark out, your brain starts releasing melatonin, which tells you to go to sleep. Because yes, not only was the sun worshipped, and it's only been sun worship, but when the sun goes away, we go to sleep. Why? Because it gets dark. There's danger out there. We can't see, all that kind of stuff. We've evolved this way. So it releases melatonin. It also releases what's known as dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT, which a lot of people know about already. But DMT is released twice in your life. It's released as you're dreaming. It causes you to dream. And it's released as your body is shutting down and you're about to die. Okay? That's what it is. Now, what about it? Well, it also has fluid in the pineal gland. They're calcium carbonate crystals that change in pressure. It's called the piezoelectric effect. What the piezoelectric effect basically says is if you take this vitreous fluid, okay, from the pineal gland, and you take these crystals, and you put them on a table and you harden them, and then you hit them with a hammer, colors would fly out of it. That's what it means. Okay, it's also piezochromatic. Okay, now the interior of the pineal gland has retinal tissue composed of photoreceptor cells and is filled with vitreous fluid just like the eyes. It's actually wired to the visual cortex. In certain reptiles, it has a cornea and a lens. Okay, and there's things like valerian grass that carry DMT as well too. Okay. Now, in Buddhist traditions, 49 days is the total mourning period, with prayers conducted every 7 days across 7 weeks. These Buddhists believe that rebirth takes place within 49 days after death. Now, the Jews do something called Lag BaOmer, which is the counting of the Omer, which is when they count a 49-day time period during the year. The Christians, okay, have something called the Pentecost, which is starting after Easter. They count 49 days. That's when you get communion. That's when you get all that stuff, okay? So the 49 days. Well, why 49 days? Well, if you look at modern day 3D ultrasounds, okay, like the real good ones that show the brain of the baby, okay, the pineal gland becomes visible on the 49th day. Okay, now I talk about, Joanna, that life begins at conception, literally, and I'm not talking about that from a religious point. Literally, Genesis 1:3, God says, "Let there be light." Okay, what happens when a sperm meets an egg, and the egg actually lets the sperm in? As the sperm is going in, there is a visible flash of light that goes off inside a woman's womb. Okay, that is the beginning of creation. And on day 49, that's when the soul enters. And the ancients knew all this. Okay, and it sounds like witchcraft and magic to us, but it's not. Let's talk about hell, because we're living in it right now. Okay, so let's talk about hell. Let's demystify hell. Hell's a flaming inferno, right? That's where you go to burn for eternity if you don't believe the right thing. But how do we detect pain? With the nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, the nerve endings, and the neurons. So when you die and you give up your ghost, and then you're just a shell of a body that decomposes, with all your nerve endings, your brain, and everything, okay? Let me ask you a question. If you're just a soul, and you can't sense physical pain, physical touch, how are you going to burn then? It would be like taking a torch and holding it in front of a ghost. What's it going to do? Okay? Hell is not actually a place that you go to if you're bad. Hell is actually winter. So let's build a case for that. The idea of a fiery pit where you burn for all eternity is ridiculous when you think about it. Logically, hell is actually winter on Earth. Why? Well, it's cold. The vegetation and beautiful flowers and plants are dead. The trees shed their leaves and bear no fruit. It's freezing cold out. People tend to get sick more often. Dangerous animals, if they're not hibernating, are starving and scrounging for food. It's dangerous for humans. Okay?
And in Spanish by itself, did you get that? You got that? Oh, you got Italian. Gotcha.
Is it the same thing in Spanish?
In Spanish, it's in infierno.
Infierno.
Which is invierno. Which is infierno is winter.
Mm-hmm. The Italian word for winter is inverno.
Invierno, yeah.
You flip a letter, inferno, pervert its meaning. Because what you do, what the elites do, is they shift something slightly and they give it a whole new meaning. Okay? But when you trace everything back to its genesis, it's different. Okay, this picture is Dante Inferno's The Divine Comedy. There were Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. Look at Satan. He's in the bottom level of hell. Look how he's depicted. This is the bottom layer of hell. He's frozen up to his waist. And the reason is because his wings are flapping so hard that every time something starts to thaw, it freezes over again. So it consistently freezes and consistently freezes. When you build an igloo, one of the things you do is you light a fire in the middle of it. Why? Because it slightly melts the snow that's covering you on top. And what it does is, as it starts to melt, the cold wind outside refreezes it. So it kind of builds many layers to it. Okay? It's the same thing with this. Okay? They say it in the Bible, Joanna. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. When do you chatter your teeth? In the winter? In the cold? Or in the heat? You don't chatter your teeth in the fire. That doesn't make sense. Okay, I don't need that one. Satan and Lucifer. Satan doesn't exist. He's not a red devil with a tail and a pitchfork. In fact, the earliest paintings of him in the 900s, he was actually blue. Hence where we get the Duke Blue Devils from. That's where they get their name from. The Hebrew word for Satan is Hashatan, which literally translates to adversary or accuser. In proper context, two competing sports teams are Satans to one another. That's all Satan means. Now, Lucifer, he is known as the light bringer, the light bearer. Genesis 1:3. And God said, let there be light. How can there be light without the light bearer? Lucifer is immediately mentioned in the Bible, if not by name, but by action and purpose. Lucifer is also known as the morning star. The morning star is also known as the planet Venus. The reasoning is if you go out and look at the sky just before the sunrise in the east, you'll see a bright light directly over it. That's Venus. That's Lucifer. It announces the arrival of God's only begotten Son, the light of the world, as Jesus is known, who's the sun. Lucifer is also known to have a pentagram. That's his symbol. Continuing with Lucifer as Venus, if you follow Earth and Venus's orbit around the sun in a year's time, they almost connect at 5 points. You connect them, you get the pentagram. This is what it looks like. The pentagram also has other meanings too. Okay, 1 point up represents summer. Pointed down represents winter. Okay, there's different levels to it. The 5 points in early Christianity, the 5 points of the pentagram represented the five, what do you call it? The 5 points on Jesus when he was crucified. You have the feet, the 2 wrists, the spear, and the crown of thorns. That's 5. Okay. So here's Baphomet. Okay. Notice Levi's name there. He's also the first person to invert the pentagram, point down. The goat is Capricorn, and the man is Aquarius, sign of the man. Those are connecting signs. Also, at the firmament of Aquarius connects at the opposing sign to Virgo, the sign of the woman. So you can bend the zodiac too. The same way that Eminem bends words to make rhymes, you could bend the zodiac in order to make connections too. Now, the ancients knew that the divine was both masculine and feminine, left brain masculine and right brain feminine. That's why Baphomet has breasts. It's also not a demonic entity. It's just the joining of the male and female, just like this. This is the rudimentary phallic symbol, the original penis, so to speak. It is known as a spear. Then the middle. This is the rudimentary sign of the womb, the chalice, the feminine. Then this is the Star of David. Okay, it's the joining of the two. It's the male and the female. It's a hermaphrodite. And there is more sex magic in the Bible than you think besides just that. This is a faithful recreation of Solomon's temple. Okay, you see the cubits at the bottom. This is how it would look if you actually build it as according to the Bible. This is a view of Solomon's temple from above. It's important to note that Solomon is not a name of a person. It's a combination of 3 words for the sun. Sol, or sun in Latin, Om, which is the sun, which is the light of the syllable Om, as advised in the Upanishads, and On was the city of light, or Heliopolis in Greece. The city of light was called On. That's why the city of light. That's why when you go into a room to get light, you have to turn the lights on. It came down from there. Okay, this is created using sex magic. Yakin and Boaz represent the testicles from this view. The porch is the base of the penis. The holy place is the shaft. The holy of holies is the head. The arc or hole of the penis is where the DNA Torah information is stored. The store chambers represents the female womb. And the 2 entrances to them represent the fallopian tubes. I forgot this was in here, Joanna. I'm so sorry to show porn during this time frame. I really feel bad.
It's fine because it also represents the inside of the brain. So it could go both ways.
Yeah. Well, the Bible's also anatomical, 100%. So what about Samson and Delilah? So every Bible story is so Jesus in the New Testament is the sun going through the 12 zodiac signs. They're metaphors for that. But every Bible story, or almost every Bible story, is a different way of telling the sun going through the 12 signs, because that's the only story there's ever been. So Samson and Delilah, the word Samson, or the name Samson in Hebrew is Shimshon, which means little son. So Samson is the son, whereas the root of Delilah is Lila. When you say goodnight to someone in Hebrew, you say Lila Tov, which literally translates to night good, but it means good night. Okay, what is the story of Delilah and Samson? She cuts his hair, which takes away his power. He ends up eyes gouged out and blind. However, this is just another story of the sun and how it goes away at night. It's chased away by the night. Okay, people are blind. It's the eternal battle between the sun and night, or set from the ancient Egyptians. That's why we have a sunset. Okay, what about Jonah in the body of the whale? In Hebrew, the words are dag gadol, which translates to great giant fish. They actually never say it's a whale. All right, but just assume that it's a whale. He's in it for 3 days. It's the 3 days you see recurring in the Bible over and over again. They're always mentioning 3 days. The 3 days is the 3 days that it's walked sideways, that the sun walks sideways. Then Daniel and the lion's den. It's a story revolving around two signs in astrology. Daniel the man, Aquarius, and the lions, which are Leo the lion. In the zodiac, they're opposing signs. Abraham and Sarah. Abraham's name was Abram before he was made Abraham. He's given the name Abraham after he's about to kill Isaac, and the angel stops him. Okay, so he's given the name Abraham, but he was Abram. Abram is a combination of two words: Abba, which is father in Hebrew, and Ram, which means ram. Father, Ram, father of the people of Aries, the Jews. Abram actually goes back to Brahma, and Sarai goes back to Sarah or Saraswati, which is influenced from the Hindus. Lot and Lot's wife in Sodom and Gomorrah. In the ancient times, people were paid with salt. It's where the word salary comes from, salt. Why? Because it preserved the meat. And when you killed a cow and didn't eat it in one day, it would go bad. Salt kept it viable for longer. There was no refrigeration back then. Salt was the highest currency aside from gold and silver. So when she turns into a pile of salt, the moral of the story is you have to think about it like leaving Las Vegas, gambling, hookers, debauchery, turning back and turning into a bunch of chips or a bunch of gold coins. That's the moral of the story. Now, there's a town in Israel called Megiddo, which a 3rd century church was found under another church. It's one of the oldest churches known to man. This is in the 200s. This is before the Council of Nicaea. In the center of the floor is the mosaic of the two fish, Pisces, because they knew Jesus was the solar deity, and they were worshiping that. They were worshiping the soul. They were worshiping the sun. Christians before Constantine were known as Helionostics, and Helios in Greek means sun, and Gnosis means knowers. They were sun worshippers. Megiddo also happens to be the root of the word Armageddon, which is where the war on earth and the rapture is supposed to begin, in Megiddo. So it's ironic that this church was found. Okay, the zodiac surrounds the Stufetta della Babbiana, the papal bath. Do you think that maybe people in the church know the real story, know what's really going on? America was not founded as a Christian nation. And the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus by the Supreme Being, as his father in the womb of a virgin, will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. Thomas Jefferson in a letter to John Adams. What influence, in fact, have Christian ecclesiastical establishments had on civil society? In many instances, they have been upholding the thrones of political tyranny. In no instance have they been sent as the guardians of the liberties of the people. James Madison. The purpose of separation and church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. James Madison. This one is my favorite. The Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man called Christ in the place of the sun and pay him the adoration originally paid to the sun. That was Thomas Paine. These are our founding fathers, Joanna, of this country. They knew this. Okay, we seem to be getting dumber and dumber as a society and further away from this truth. The founding fathers knew this. Okay, so all this talk about America was built on Judeo-Christian traditions and morals and that, it's not true. It's just not true. They kept it separate for a reason. Okay, this is the swastika. Okay, people are terrified of it. The swastika, if you read Wikipedia, for example, talks about its origins of ancient times, from ancient religions and its peaceful meaning. Again, tweak it a little. Remember, you tweak it so they reverse it and they pervert the meanings. That's what the Germans did. Okay, and you get the modern day peace symbol that will never be reclaimed as a peaceful symbol. But it goes further than that. The swastika isn't Buddhist or Hindu, Babylonian or Syrian or Sumerian. It's actually astrology. This is the oldest swastika that we found. It's 17,000 years old and it's from the Ukraine. Remember, 17,000 years is also how old the Lascaux cave paintings are. Okay, that seems to be like the furthest reaching of our past that we could find this kind of information on. But what is the swastika? It's the Big Dipper rotated around the North Star. As shown here on the solstices and the equinoxes. Connect them, you get the swastika. Everything goes back to astrology. Okay, you Google, okay, you look up Google, when was Saturn discovered? They'll tell you 1610. Galileo Galilei spots Saturn's rings through a telescope but mistakes them for a triple planet. Okay, they tell you Saturn was discovered in 1610, but that's bullshit. Okay, because we all know, even if you don't know anything, that they used to have Saturnalia. They had Saturnalia worship. They still have Saturnalia to this day. Okay, and as far as the heliocentric model goes, Copernicus, okay, Julian the Apostate, who was the nephew of Constantine, okay, nephew of Constantine, tried to bring everyone back to solar worship after his uncle died and got an arrow in his back for it. He's quoted in one of his books, because his books have survived. You get his books, you find this quote. He says, the sun is the fiery chariot that all the planets dance around. That's 1700 years before, or give or take, at least 1,000 years before Copernicus discovered. Here's Saturn worship right here. You have on top left what's called the tefillin. It's the black cube. Saturn was known as the black planet or the black cube. It was known as the black sun, actually. Okay, here's Mecca. Okay, there's the black cube. There's the mortar board, the mortar hat, the black cube, because this is square. This is the Nintendo GameCube. The Sega Saturn, it's called the Sega Saturn, and it's literally a black cube. The black robe, these are priests of Saturn, okay? The earrings and the wedding rings, okay? Women were told they had to listen to their god, so they'd get their ears pierced with rings, because Saturn had the rings. Saturn was their god. Men would get wedding rings, okay? Men would wear wedding rings, wedding bands, because they had to pledge their fidelity in front of their god. That was Saturn. Okay, now this is we're just going to get into some random stuff talking about astrology. This is Göbekli Tepe. This is 13,000 BC. Okay, what you're looking at right now is the excavated astronomical observatory, I should say. Okay, this is Stonehenge. It's the same thing. It's a clock. This is the Sphinx. Okay, how do we know this stuff is this old? Okay, well, the Sphinx, for example, okay, the body of a lion, the head of a man, let alone the fact that that is a combination of Aquarius, the man, and Leo, the lion, their opposing signs. The Sphinx is actually, you can't really see it in this picture, but the Sphinx is actually smooth on the back. Now, it was under sand forever because Napoleon took daguerreotypes, which was an early type of photography, of this thing in the desert, okay? And it was up to its neck in sand. So you would think that if sand was plowing the back of it, it would be coarse, it would be gritty, it would be grainy, but it's not, it's smooth. Well, how do we know that it's smooth? What could have possibly done that? Well, it turns out that 13,000 years ago was the end of the last dry age, okay? The ice age, it melted, and then the water ran over the Sphinx, smoothing it out for thousands and thousands of years. Okay, the other way that we know that the Sphinx is that old, okay, is if you look at where the Sphinx is looking at right now, 12,000 years ago, okay, it would have been facing the constellation Leo because it was the age of Leo. So it was Leo worship. So we know that this was going back as far as that goes. Now this is...
Hold on, one question.
Yeah.
One question. So, because I've always heard that it was Leo and Virgo, because it was the woman and the lion, and the completion of basically virgin consciousness all the way to the highest, which is the lion. So could it be looked at both ways as Aquarius and Leo being...
That's an amazing question. Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like the merge between...
So okay, let's
Virgo and Leo.
We know that the ancients, the year didn't start in Aries; it started in Virgo. We know that. Okay, so sorry, there's crazy shit going on. So we know that. Okay, is it possible? Yes, because Virgo is also a connecting sign to Leo, whereas Aquarius is the opposing sign. So there's the pattern there too. But the thing that I would draw your attention to, why I think it was the man. Okay, I mean, it could have been both. To be honest with you, it could have evolved over time. But the reason I think it was Aquarius, okay, is because if you look at the Egyptians, they did everything in duality. Okay, there was always two of everything facing each other or whatever. I fully believe that there's a second Sphinx facing it. Okay, the Sphinxes would have been facing each other. One is completely buried, and a town was built over it. The other one was buried up to its neck. We only saw this, and then we excavated it. Okay. Now, if you look at it right now, we're in the age of Aquarius right now. And I kind of teased this in one of my books as a plot. But basically, if you're facing each other, right? This is the Sphinx that we found that's facing the age of Leo. This is the Sphinx, okay, that would be facing the age of Aquarius. So if we discovered in the age of Aquarius, it would be built to be discovered to be found in the age of Aquarius. So I think that timeline would work too. But I can see your point either way. It's a great question, to be honest.
Right. Both are interesting. Right, right. It makes me think of the movie The Neverending Story. You know how they just had the two facing each other. But yeah, either way, I don't know. Anything's possible.
I think you could make a great case for either of them. But I think the one thing that we can agree on, Joanna, is the Sphinx is a lot older than they say it is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
For sure.
And like, definitely astrological. So
absolutely, 100%. So this is something called the Antikythera mechanism. It was discovered in a Greek battleship, okay, at the bottom of the ocean. This is what it looks like on the right. They figured out that it was the first computer. This was the first computer. Okay, it mapped out. If you look at the gears and everything, it mapped out the solar system. Okay, it mapped out the stars and everything. It was a way to navigate the seas. Okay, now let's get into astrotheology and how the elites use it against us. When do you kill John Kennedy? November 22nd, the handover date from Scorpio to Sagittarius. Remember the astrotheology we talked about before? Scorpio being the betrayer, he was betrayed, and dies in Sagittarius because the sun dies on December 21st, which is the last day of Sagittarius. That's the winter solstice. Okay? Why is January 1st New Year's Day? Neil deGrasse Tyson has gone on record saying that nothing special happens on January 1st or December 31st. He's wrong, and I've tried to call him out on it, and I've basically given up at this point. Something interesting happens in our new year in the world, because at midnight on December 31st, if you look up as high as you can in the sky, you'll see the north. Okay, so I got to change this. It's not actually the North Star, it's Sirius, the dog star. So forgive me. But when you look up straight in the sky, midnight, December 31st, you'll see Sirius. It's at its height. It's our dog star. It's our binary. Okay. Then you follow a line straight down, it's Earth. You follow a line straight down, it's the sun. It's a perfect alignment. Okay. Otherwise, you should have a new year when Passover and Easter begins around in Aries when the year begins, or around the spring equinox, or September 21st when the Jews have their new year. Okay, or the solstices. Those are the days that make sense astrologically and astrotheologically. Why do they always crash?
And also like March, April, May, June, what is it? September being the 7th and October being the 8th, November being the 9th. So it would start in March 21st.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just for that reason alone.
Only because of Caesar Augustus and Julius Caesar that we have July and August. Okay, but what it used to be was yeah, no, 100%. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, you're 100%. But now here's the interesting thing, because this is right now, with all the stuff you're hearing about in the world. Why do they always crash the stock market in Libra? Now, the panic of 1907 was October 1907. Okay, that was when Teddy Roosevelt was in charge. He was a Republican. The Wall Street crash of 1929, October 24th, 1929. Okay, Herbert Hoover, a Republican. Black Monday, October 19th, 1987. Okay, that was Ronald Reagan, a Republican. Friday the 14th mini crash, October 13th, 1989. George H.W. Bush, a Republican. Stock market downturn of 2002, October 9th, 2002. George W. Bush, a Republican. Now, 10% in most of the world's indices dropped October 24th, 2008. Okay, that was Barack Obama. So he's the only outlier. However, the reason the markets dropped is because it was the failed policy of the Clintons, who wanted everyone to get a house, so the subprime mortgage took over. Okay, this is the only natural crash that happened. Aside from this, they always crash the stock market in Libra, and they always crash it when the Republicans are in office. Okay, now the other thing too is that right now, if the Republicans are looking to take over, okay, they're going to crash the market. If you look at it right now, the Vatican pulled all their money out of all the banks. Okay, the market continues to slip and slide. I think I've been saying this for a year that there's going to be a crash in Libra, or at least no later than the handover date. And the only reason that there wouldn't be a crash is because the Democrats in office. Okay, you can just look at the patterns. You look at the stars, you look at the patterns. Okay. Now, the largest daily point gains are done in Aries, when everything's rising, when everything comes back to life. Roman Catholic Catechism 2116. All forms of divination are to be rejected, recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future, consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretation of omens and lots. The phenomena of clairvoyance and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis are the human beings, as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. It's not just the Catholics, though. Abu Dawood.
That's hilarious. We just have to stop there for just a second and take a minute to think for a second and look at that again and just be like, seriously? Because seriously, I mean, God is light. Stars are light. Everything. I mean, it is just, you know what I mean? It's like that's where people have to go beyond this and just.
It's gaslighting.
For real. I mean, yeah, it's just like you said, they change something around and then they say, don't look at this because it's giving you power. Meanwhile, we're going to look at it because we want power, not understanding that you can have both. There's good power and there's bad power, but there's still power in knowing this stuff, and they just conceal it from everybody so that they have the power.
It's literally this simple. You wouldn't
makes me mad.
You wouldn't believe how many I've done podcasts for 40,000 people. I've done podcasts for 10 people. I don't care. I share. If someone wants me on, I will do their show. I have no problem doing that. And sometimes I see comments like, the second he said the Bible wasn't real, he lost me. Or, sorry, astrology is for the devil. I can't be a part of this. Really?
Yeah.
But look at this too. Ready? Abu Dawood. It is suggested that the Prophet Muhammad stated, whoever seeks knowledge from the stars is seeking one of the branches of witchcraft, that of which is inherently forbidden in Islam. I mean, the book is entirely astrology. It's not only astrology, but it's entirely astrology. You know, I mean,
and they demonized the word witchcraft because a witch originally came from a wise woman. So they just wanted to, completely tear that whole thing apart just to kind of change the perception of how we look at things. And now you put all these words together and it doesn't even make sense, truly. Like for someone who knows,
If let's say they had computers back then, Joanna, let's say me and you were talking about this stuff 500 years ago, okay, they would have chopped my head off, and they probably would have weighed you against the duck to see which weighs more, and then thrown you into the lake.
And here I am again, bitches.
Exposing truth.
Here we are doing it again. Let's do it. Keep going.
Ignore that. The Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix is the story of Christ, the sun, a flaming form of life that dies and rises from its ashes. Jesus was the sun who died for 3 days and came back to life. Okay? Remember, you have Scorpio, and then it evolves into the eagle, and then it evolves into the phoenix. But it's all the story about the sun. That's why it's called the Phoenix Suns. But what about the Phoenix women's team? The Phoenix Mercury. Mercury is the ruling planet of Virgo, the only woman sign. Okay? So that's why. Now, what about this? 1990s movie Face Off, starring Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. What are their characters' names? Nicolas Cage's character is Castor Troy. His brother is Pollux Troy in the movie. That's literally Gemini. What about Travolta? His name is Sean Archer. Who's the archer with the bow and the arrow? That's Sagittarius. They're opposing signs. So they embed this stuff. They tell you not to look at it, and then they hide it. There are a ton of characters in Harry Potter that are named after stars or constellations. Draco Malfoy, Draco the Dragon, Pollux Black, Sirius Black, Andromeda Black, Regulus Black, Arcturus Black, Cassiopeia Black, Orion Black, and Cygnus Black. Algol, also known as the Demon Star. There's a long history of evil attached to it. Algol is an evil star. It's always in Taurus, for people who want to know. It's always in Taurus. But think about it. In Batman Begins, the Christian Bale movie, the character's name is Ra's al Ghul, who gets the name from Al Ghul. That's where his name comes from. See how they use this against you? They hide it because they're talking to each other. Now this one's crazy.
Even though it's not even hidden, because a lot of the stars are in Job. I mean, when you read Job, there they are.
Yeah, you saw my thing earlier, right? Where God's answering Job, do you know the Mazzaroth? Do you know your zodiac? And then he literally talks about all the stars.
Right.
What about this? 1990s song video for the Cranberry Zombie. Do you remember this song? Do you remember the video?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Here's Dolores O'Riordan. She's painted gold like the sun, and her head dressing represents the rays of the sun, much like Jesus in the crown of thorns. But is it that? What's the very next scene after she's singing this? It's the sun on the cross with the little Sagittarius ready to kill her. Okay? They embed this into pop music. They embed this into TV. They embed this into movies. And then the catechism tells you not to look at it. What about this? Katy Perry's Dark Horse video. Here we see the Eye of Horus, the Illuminati symbol. A lot of people think it's an Illuminati symbol. It's actually the Eye of Horus. Okay? It goes back to the pineal.
And that's where they confuse people.
Yeah.
Right. It's the whole, this is evil. And then people go, oh, stay away. But it's like, hey, there's a way of using it. So
it's the pineal. This is the pineal gland. That's what it is. What about this? Have you seen this? Michelangelo's fresco of God with giving life to Adam. Okay. Well, what is the first thing that you notice? Well, for me, I noticed that the shell that God is in, okay, the shell that he's in, okay, looks a lot like a cut open brain. If you think about it, looks like a sagittal cut of the human brain. Okay. And if you look at where God is physically sitting, that's where the pineal gland is. And if you look at these seraphim or these angels and you count them, there's 12 of them, just like the 12 zodiac signs, just like the 12 tribes of Israel, just like the 12 months of the year.
And the 12 cranial nerves.
And the 12 cranial nerves. That's the anatomical part of it. Yes, the 12 cranial nerves. And also, if you look at them, they kind of look like the folds of a brain. So this is God in the pineal gland giving man consciousness. That's what Michelangelo did, because they had to embed it. Okay, they had to hide it in symbolism. People are asking why symbolism? Because you have no idea what the church was like, even 100 years ago. Okay, they owned everything. Okay, Da Vinci's The Last Supper. Notice how they're broken down into threes. Okay, there's 4 sets of 3. Okay, those are the seasons, starting with Aries, ending in Pisces. And if you look at Aries, he's wearing green. Well, why is Aries wearing green? He's telling you he's Aries. Why? Because you've got Aquarius and Pisces right behind him, and that was blue. Okay, because that's water. Okay, and green is Aries, the ram, the first one. Okay, the beginning of the year. Okay, and that's when things start to get green again. Okay, that's when everything is green. That's when they graze. Now you skip Taurus and you look at Gemini. He's holding his hands up like this. He's telling you they're twins. He's 2 of them. Yep. Then you skip Leo, but you look at Leo. No, you skip Gemini. No, not Gemini. I'm sorry. You skip Cancer.
Cancer.
And then you look at Leo, and he's pointing to something. He's pointing to Virgo's Adam's apple to show you that she's a woman. Okay, and then you have Jesus right here, the sun, right in the middle. And what's the one right after Virgo? Well, that's Libra, the scales. Why is he doing this? You see that? It's all embedded. It's all hidden in here. Okay, and they had to do this because they would get killed. It's ridiculous.
I like Scorpio's finger, Scorpio's tail or whatever. Yeah, right here.
The stinger, yeah. Modern day things revolving around astrology. Mermaids, a combination of the man sign in Aquarius or the woman sign in Virgo and the fish sign in Pisces. Aquarius and Pisces are connecting signs. Pisces and Virgo are opposing signs. Bullfighting, bull riding. Aquarius the man and Taurus the bull. Jousting, 2 times Sagittarius. Lion taming, Aquarius the man and Leo the lion. They are opposing signs. Fishing, Aquarius the man and Pisces the fish. It's the same thing as mermaids. We don't need this. Homosexuality in the Bible. I had to throw this in. Everyone knows about Leviticus 18:22. However, is it really what is said there? The Greek word arsenokotai shows up in 2 different versions of the Bible in Greek, but was not translated to mean homosexual until 1946. Yes, that long. In the 1800s, the German Bible said, man shall not lie with young boys as he does with a woman, for it is an abomination. Leviticus 18:22, same with Leviticus 20:13, young boys. 1 Corinthians, the word arsenokotai, and I threw this in there, but it's important to mention that the Bible was written in Hebrew, yes. But everyone at the time knew that if you were an intellect, you wrote and read in Greek. Okay? So 1 Corinthians becomes, boy molesters will not inherit the kingdom of God. If you were to grab Martin Luther's original German translation from 1534, they used the word Nabenschonder. Naben is a boy, Schonder is molester. The first time homosexual appears in the German translation is 1983. These are the books that I've decoded so far with astrotheology. The book of Matthew, we did that already. The book of Revelation, we touched on that. The book of Enoch, Jubilees, Gospel of Thomas, Mary Magdalene, Melchizedek, Philip, Judas, Gospel of John, book of Psalms, the Gospel of Q, the book of Mormon, the Gospel of the Lord according to Marcion de Sinope. Now, it's one thing if it's in the Bible. It's another thing if it's in all the Gnostic texts. And it's a whole other thing if it's also in the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Code of Hammurabi, the Quran, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Okay, I've traced it and I've outlined it and I have videos on it and it's all on my YouTube channel. Okay, now here's the thing too. I'm just going to tease this, but astrotheology is also in the Quran. Okay, remember the 72 virgins? The 72 virgins that apparently they get if they do a righteous deed or kill a bunch of non-believers. It's astrology. There's a star called 70 Virginis, which borders Virgo. There's the 70. There's one virgin in Virgo, that's 71, plus the virgin you marry on Earth, that's 72. Those are the 72 virgins. It's all astrology. And the Prophet Muhammad forbids it. I also have a book series. It's 7 books deep. So far, there's going to be 9. The 8th one's coming out around Christmas, where I talk about the following: gematria, etymology, numerology, astronomy, astrology, astrotheology, out-of-body experiences, the Akashic records, symbology, remote viewing, religious secrets, capstones of the pyramids, mystery school channelers, near-death experiences, DMT monitoring, lucid dreaming, acoustic levitation, physics and quantum physics, psychotherapy, psychology, spiritual guides, and shared dreaming, crystal technology, conspiracies that not many people know about, corruption, and secret societies. This is my book series. It's called Into the Rabbit Hole. You can get it on Amazon. You can reach out to me on social media. Just look up my name. I sell signed copies. I also sell physical signed copies of my books. I also sell flash drives. I started doing this, flash drives, okay, which is cheaper than the books. But I include the 7 books that are out in digital form on the flash drive, as well as all my PowerPoint presentations for everything. So you can actually read it yourself. Okay. I also have a kid's book with my astrologer. It's called A's for Aries. Okay. To get them young, to teach them this stuff. Okay. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. So if we look at this picture now, we can kind of understand it. The star is Polaris, the North Star. The lambs are Aries, the camel is Camelopardalis. The donkey is Acellus Borealis, which is in Cancer. The bull is Taurus. Jesus the baby has the sun behind his head, and Mary and Joseph's clothing are alchemical. And Joanna, that's the second part of my presentation. I've got a ton of other ones, but what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Thank you so much. I know it's crazy because people have no idea the amount of work and time and effort that it takes to peel the onion with just one of those topics. Like you touch on astrotheology. And then again, like I'm always talking about, oh, well, there's the metaphysical part and there's the allegorical part of this and there's the, anatomical part of that. Because I find it so with, me being all into syncretism, so fascinating how it all connects, right? Like as above, so below. Like, yes, we're talking about the stars, but that's one aspect, right? And there's so many other aspects and they're all connected. So it's good to understand, everything that you've put together and then also look at all the different things and just kind of see what resonates, because that's when I think people will start picking up the puzzle pieces and going, okay, I see the, astrological part. I get the metaphysical part. Like when we teach in the academy, the metaphysical parts of these stories, like for example, Moses, like you said, that there's no actual record of this, and that, right? And we go and we show the metaphysical aspects of what that means as far as the aspects within us and that story, and then you look at the astrological part and it connects with it. That's what like blows everybody's mind, right? When you start seeing that all of this connects, that these
Well,
same stories that are in there are also like in fairy tales,
I love this graphic too. Here,
Yeah.
it says the scriptures are metaphysical, astrological, anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric, and mythology. Those are the seven. But it's also gematria and etymology, and it's probably more than that.
And numerology too.
And
Yeah.
numerology. So there's 10 sciences right there. But what the Bible is not is literal, historical, reality, and original. And that's the part that you can't break through to people. They have to
Right.
want to know things on their own. They have to want it. They have to really
Right.
want
Right.
it. Something has to set in them to just
And
know.
somebody might not be into the star aspect of it, which is cool. They might be into the anatomy aspect of it.
Right.
So
The only
whatever
reason,
it is that somebody's into, great. It's like eventually you're going to start piecing the puzzle pieces together and see how it
I've
connects.
been studying astrotheology for about 10 and a half years. I've been teaching it for maybe about 2.5 years. I teach it for Santos, right? And
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah. 10 and a half years I've put into this in one
Yeah.
aspect. I'm nowhere near done with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, imagine having to put 10 and a half years into all those other sciences. It's more than you can learn in a lifetime. It's the most extraordinary book that was ever written, and it's not original. Okay. The stories come from other places too. And then you have the Catholic Church
Mm-hmm.
telling you astrology is evil, which at the lowest level of people functioning, they'll be like, oh, okay. They'll have no idea.
And what I find it funny though is that a lot of those that are confused, um, but that also are quick to get it, are the people who are Catholic,
Yeah.
because they're the first ones to kind of go, yeah, I don't know about this.
Mm-hmm.
Versus others are a little bit harder. Like Christians are harder to kind of turn from seeing it as a historical, literal thing into
Right.
everything else that it is,
Right.
just because of the programming and the conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my thing: there's duality in everything. Everything is either good or bad, right? Like I'm either going to shove this in your eye or I'm going to, whatever. That was a bad example, but
I get your point.
a
Yeah.
hammer, you know what I'm saying? Like a hammer will build a house or it will, you know, mess you up. But the point is that it's a tool, but it's all about the intention of the person
Right.
and how they use it and how they see it. But understanding it and showing us all of how it ties together, because I mean really this even though this two part was a lot, it was really not a lot. It was really a summary of everything, because you can't really
That's right. It's an
put it
introduction. It's an
all.
introduction.
Yeah, it's kind of like, look,
Yeah.
this is what it is. I'm showing it as much as I can so that you can go see for yourself and do more research.
I mean, I have
So
to leave
really
a lot. I have
it's
to leave a lot out of it because the truth of the matter
yeah.
is that, like, I've been told that I can break down incredibly complex things and make it so that a child can understand. And I think that's what either Einstein said. I think he said that you don't understand something unless you can explain it to a child. Okay, and that's what I
Right.
really try to do with my stuff. I try and really break it down and show obvious examples. The thing about astrotheology is it's the oldest science in the Bible. It's the oldest one, and it's the most prevalent one. Okay, it's throughout every passage basically. When I first discovered astrotheology, I thought this was it. I thought this was what the Bible really was. Then I evolved because I was talking to like Truth Seeker. I did a couple podcasts with him. He helped open my eyes to realize it's a bunch of other sciences too.
Yeah.
But for me, the reason I share this and I teach this for people is because for 90% of the public, okay, that read the Bible, okay, I try and demystify hell, Satan, Lucifer, Baphomet, all that kind of swastika. I just try and demystify it to show you where it really comes from, because 90% of the people are not getting the wonders of the Bible. And what's worse is what religion does, and all religions do, which is why I have a problem with all of them.
Living in fear.
is it's living in fear. They first of all, they convince you that you're not a part of God. They convince you that you're not connected to God. They convince you that there's an infinite being. Okay, what exists outside of infinity? There's an infinite being that is somehow separate from something outside the infinite. Okay, and they make you pray and worship. How many
But
times?
yet the Bible says it right there. Seek first the kingdom. The kingdom is within you, within you, like
Yes,
inside,
literally.
not
I mean,
anywhere
how
else.
many times did Jesus have to say, you know, when you're talking about Virgo, the wheat stalk, that's the bread, right? That's Virgo with the wheat stalk, it's bread. How many times does Jesus have to say, why can't you? He gets pissed. He's like, why don't you guys understand? I'm not talking about bread. You know, and when you understand astrologically, you're like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think, again, there's stepping stones for everybody. Everybody's in a different place. There's so much more. There's, all these other subjects. We all have our different ways of teaching it, of breaking it down. And I think just when you start putting it all together, you live a better life. You live a better life because you start understanding from a place of you don't come from a place of the unknown, right? And most people fear the unknown. Now it's like, okay, I know what that means, right? Down even to the etymology of the words, right? And if you understand that, it's like, oh, okay, there's nothing to fear.
No, there's nothing
Like
to fear.
God is love.
In fact,
Like that's it.
there's nothing but love.
Exactly. That's
When
what
you
I'm saying.
when you
That's it.
realize
That's it.
it's the biggest secret, and it's in plain sight. It's every time you look at something that you are a part of God. You are God experiencing himself as Joanna or
Yeah.
as Micah. You are literally
Right.
God. The total amount of consciousness in the world is one. We are all experiencing the same thing. Now we have different filters, our five senses.
Fractals. Right.
And there's colorblind people, and there's whatever. For example, there's people experiencing it, but it's just God having an experience. And I explain it this way because if you're everything, which God is everything. Nothing is outside of God. If you're everything, the only thing you can do, what are you going to do? Have a new experience? You can't do that if you're everything. So what do? Turn yourself down to a dimension, wipe your memory clean, and experience what you've created. That's the only thing you can do. And our purpose on life.
It's the game of like light to the lowest dimension and then make your way back to the light, and then dark and light. And it's like the game of light and dark.
I tell people on my channel, I go, look, you want to know how to raise your vibration? I say quit alcohol. Number one, quit alcohol completely because it's a depressant and it lowers your vibration. Quit alcohol. Stop masturbating because your chrism will never rise if you don't do that. And
That is a really, really hard one to break, especially like when you're so used to that and you're like the whole society has taught you that way. And then you're like, for example, my husband and I, when we first started doing that, like that was really, really difficult just to break the mindset of like, that's what we do, you do that. And now it's become more of a dance. Like, okay, we're just dancing and you know when to stop. But that's really, really difficult. That's a whole nother subject within itself. But yes.
That's how you raise your chrism. And the other thing you got to realize is that it's harder for males, obviously, I think, but what you realize is that you have to be very careful who you imprint with. Okay, who you share your soul with, especially sexually, because your energy's imprint, your toroidal fields are meshing. That not only that, but on a very basic level, the person you slept with becomes a memory in your mind forever. So just based on a picture in your head, that will always be there. You'll always remember a horrible experience or a good experience. Maybe you won't remember all of them, but yeah, I tell people all this stuff. I also tell people to, because I'm not very big into meditation myself, but what I do is I light a candle and I stare at it for 20 minutes a day. Okay, fire gazing. That's why when you go to a bonfire, that's why you're so much calmer around a bonfire. But yeah, no, I tell people all this kind of stuff. I have all these videos of my astrotheological breakdown. Would you like me to send you some that you can upload to your academy? Just a thought. If you're interested, I could start sending you videos.
Yeah, or send me or do you have like a link for them or something?
My YouTube, they're all there.
Okay.
If you go to the playlist section on my YouTube, I have all my astrotheology. I have it broken down into like short truth bombs, and I have it broken down into interviews, and then I have a third section that's all my
Okay.
lectures for astrotheology. Please take them.
Yeah, because we have different spaces in the academy. So we have like our theology space, we have an astrology space. So like in every space we have either a class or we have different things broken down. So either one of those, the theology or the astrology,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
maybe
more
under
than welcome.
astrology.
You're more than welcome to take them. You don't even have to ask. Just go to my YouTube and link them. It's fine.
Done. Perfect. All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for all this info. For everybody watching, if you are confused, if you are still here, that means you're not triggered. If you are triggered, there's something more to look at within yourself. Like I always say, please go within, please meditate, see what it is that is triggering you, because ultimately we are all mirrors of each other. So that's something that maybe you need to look at within yourself. But thank you so much for watching and for taking the time to do this and sharing it with the world. It is very much needed. And hope you guys have a great rest of the day or night whenever you're watching this. Thank you. Peace.